Hi class, today we are reading Chapter 1, Lesson 5, How did the Desert Peoples of California use their environment? Let's take a look at our first heading, Life in the Desert. California's deserts are challenging places to live. Desert temperatures can soar above 100 degrees in summer. They can drop below 0 degrees in winter. The terrain includes mountains and low valleys. There are dry basins and wide rivers and lakes. Rainfall can vary greatly from year to year. Plants and other food sources might be plentiful one year, but scarce the next. All right, let's take a look at this picture here. If we read the caption, it says, California's deserts are harsh lands with great natural diversity. Life in the desert can be difficult. Yet many California Indians adapted and thrived in its harsh environment. California Indians of the Great Basin and Colorado River cultural area lived in the arid lands east of the Sierra Nevada mountain range. Some groups were hunters and gatherers. They moved around to find resources. Others learned agriculture and used the local resources. Each group developed traditions and tools that allowed them to make the most of what was available. And if we take a look over here at our map, it says the Colorado River and Great Basin cultural areas. And over here in our key, we see we have the Great Basin cultural area, and that's going to be right here in the pink. And the green is the Colorado River Basin. The Northern Paiute of the Great Basin. The Great Basin lies between the Sierra Nevada and Rocky Mountains. Most tribes of the Great Basin were hunters and gatherers. Because food was scarce, they moved to find resources. One of these tribes was the Northern Paiute. They lived in the area that is now California's northeastern border with Nevada. The Northern Paiute built small windbreaks or shelters when they traveled. During the warmer months, they traveled in small family groups. Near lakes, the men hunted duck and geese. The women gathered bird eggs. In the grassland areas, they hunted antelope and deer. In the mountains, they hunted sheep. Hunting provided meat, yet most of a Paiute's family food came from plants. Berries were collected and eaten fresh or dried for stews and soups. Seeds from grasses, such as rice grass, were ground into flour. The flour was used to make mush or seed cakes. The Northern Paiute also ate the leaves, roots, and tubers of many plants. Did you know? The early Paiute are famous for the tools they used to hunt ducks. Duck hunting with a bow and arrow was difficult. Hunters created decoys or lifelike models of water birds to attract ducks and geese. In 1924, archaeologists discovered Paiute decoys in a cave. In 1986, scientists determined that the decoys were more than 2,000 years old. They were the oldest known water bird decoys in the world. And this right here is a picture. It says early Paiute hunters used tule rushes, cord, duck feathers, and thread to create lifelike duck decoys. All right, let's take a look at the next page. We have a map here of the Great Basin. So we have the Sierra Nevada mountains here, the Rocky Mountains here, and this Great Basin is this flat area that's in between here. That doesn't mean there's not hills or anything or canyons or anything like that, but for the most part, it's relatively flat with ginormous mountains on either side of it. It says, using the map scale, how large is the Great Basin and how would you describe the geography of the Great Basin? Well, I just described what the geography is like. It's mostly flat, but there are some mountains and hills and canyons, but not as big as the mountain range of the Sierra Nevadas or the Rocky Mountains. Now, according to this right here, this one little stretch right here, that would be 100 miles. So if you were to take a ruler, place it there, and then place that on the map, that would equal 100 miles. All right, let's take a look at the last paragraph here. Plants and animals were also important resources. Animal hides were used to make clothing, blankets, and doors for their homes. Willow branches and tule rushes, or reed-like plants, were used to make baskets. Northern Paiute women used the twinning method of weaving to make tightly woven baskets. Some baskets were made for sifting seeds and carrying supplies. Others were so tightly woven that they could carry water. Now, that's pretty impressive for a woven basket. All right, next page. We have a photograph here, and the caption reads, "The Northern Paiute built shelters called wickiups, made of stick and brush, fastened to poles made from willow trees." For the traveling Northern Paiute families, life changed in early fall. Many smaller family groups would come together and spend the winter in larger camps. They would build wickiups or cone-shaped huts. These shelters were made of willow branches, tule rushes, and grass. They built their camps near pinyon forest, which is a type of pine tree. And you can see here, pinyon nuts were an important food source for the Northern Paiute. And you can see the needles of the tree right there. Okay, back to this. Pinyon nuts were perhaps the most important food source for the Northern Paiute. Men, women, and children from many families worked together to harvest the nuts from the pinyon trees. The nuts were then stored for the winter in rock-lined pits. Ceremonies during pinyon harvest were a special part of Northern Paiute life. The round dance was a dance of thanks. It was performed to increase the food supply and bring rain. The headman or chosen leader during gatherings would participate in ceremonies. The ceremonies also included the tribe's shaman or religious people who were skilled at using pua. The tribe members believed that power, pua, was in all of nature. Adults would seek pua through spirit helpers for successful hunts, harvest, and good health. Let's take a look at the next page. And this next page, it says biography. So remember, boys and girls, a biography is a story about a person. It tells about their life. And this story is about Julia Parker. And we can see here's a photograph of Julia Parker. And the caption reads, "Julia Parker is an artist, teacher, and storyteller who shares her knowledge of California's native cultures." Let's take a look. For Julia Parker, the culture of California Indians is not just part of history. It is at the center of her life. For more than 60 years, Julia worked as a cultural demonstrator at Yosemite National Park. Through her work, she helped to share the culture and customs of California Indians. Julia recognized that this heritage was in danger of being lost, so Julia taught traditional arts and customs through classes and lectures. She would travel throughout the world sharing her knowledge. In 1983, she even met with England's Queen Elizabeth II. One of Julia's baskets is now on display in Windsor Castle. Julia has received an honorary doctorate from the California College of the Arts. She also earned a National Endowment of the Arts National Heritage Fellowship. Through her work, Julia has helped to preserve and share the culture and customs of California Indians. The Mojave of the Colorado River. Far south of the Northern Paiute lived another desert peoples, the Mojave. They lived along the Colorado River in the area that is now the southeastern corner of California. The summers were hot and winters were mild. Very little rain fell on the arid land. The river provided fresh water for the people and wildlife. In fact, the river shaped the lives and customs of the Mojave. The Mojave hunted rabbits and other small animals. However, they depended on the river for most of their food. Mojave men caught fish in the river. The river also provided rich soil for farming. In the winter and early spring, the Colorado River flooded. In the early summer, the river lowered and left the riverbanks covered in rich mud. The Mojave would plant their seeds into this wet, fertile soil. Many Mojave grew corn, beans, and pumpkins. In the fall, the Mojave harvested their crops. They dried some of their vegetables, such as corn. Then they stored it for winter. The plant seeds were used as food or saved for planting the following year. In addition to harvesting crops, Mojave women also gathered wild plants, such as the mesquite bean. These beans were used to make drinks, food, and flour. And here in the photograph, the caption reads, "Mojave women carrying water on her head." All right, let's take a look at the next page. We have a picture of some corn, and the caption reads, Mojave families worked together to grow crops such as corn and pumpkins on the fertile banks of the Colorado River. The tribe used different food sources in different seasons. The type of house the Mojave lived in also changed with the seasons. During the spring, summer, and fall, Mojave often lived close to the river for fishing and farming. Near the river, they built homes raised on stilts to protect them from flooding. These homes were built using a wooden frame covered by grass and brush. During the colder months, the Mojave moved further from the river. Here, they lived in homes with straight sides and sloping roofs. These homes were often made of wood from cottonwood trees. The roofs and walls were often covered with mud and clay that helped the home stay warm in the winter. The Mojave had a rich cultural life in their settlements. The tribal leader was a hereditary chief, meaning the leadership role was passed down from parent to child. Religious leaders organized feasts, celebrations, and ceremonies. The Mojave believed dreams and visions were sources of knowledge and power. Significant dreams and visions were shared as great tellings and sings. These tribal ceremonies celebrated the history and legends of the Mojave. Desert agriculture and trade. And we have a caption here underneath our picture. It says, "The Mojave made many types of bowls for cooking, storing, and carrying water." The Mojave did not move around to find food and resources like the northern Paiute. They stayed in one area and practiced agriculture. With very little rain, the California Indians living near the Colorado River could only grow crops along the banks of the river. Several tribes, including the Mojave, created irrigation systems to bring water to dry fields. Learning to flood fields allowed them to plant more crops. The Mojave used many of the desert resources to make tools that helped them in their daily lives. They made fiber nets and wooden traps for catching fish. They created planting sticks and wooden hoes for tending their fields. The Mojave made clothes, shoes, and hair dye from the bark of mesquite tree. They even used its sap as glue. The Mojave also used clay and crushed sandstone to make pottery. They made bowls and cooking pots. Some Mojave also made pottery dolls complete with clothes and human hair. The Mojave developed tools and techniques that allowed them to produce more food than they needed. They traded with other Native American groups. They exchanged clay pots and crops for goods such as baskets and shells. Mojave traders followed trails marked with stones to other tribal areas. Some routes were very long. They spanned the desert and crossed mountains. Some even led to tribal areas by the Pacific coast. Over time, trade became an important part of the Mojave life and economy. Connected to the land. Point of view. The resources along the Colorado River were valuable. The Mojave and the Chemehuevi lived near one another and used many of the same trading routes. Yet the two tribes had different perspectives on the ownership of the land. This sometimes led to battles for rights to certain lands. Why might their different views have caused these conflicts? The Mojave perspective. The Mojave would fiercely defend their land if others laid claim on their territory. The Mojave considered their land to be a sacred gift given to them by Matsam-Ho, the son of the first creator. Matsam-Ho gave the people the river and everything along the river. Whatever grew there was theirs, as he said, and they were the Aha-Makv, the Mojaves, the people who lived along the water. The Chemehuevi perspective. The Chemehuevi often traveled as they traded with other native groups and hunted for food. Some tribal members owned rights to hunt in certain areas. For the Chemehuevi, this ownership of land was hereditary and passed from the owner to his or her children or other family members. The Chemehuevi would prove their hunting rights by correctly singing a hereditary song, such as the mountain sheep or deer song. Those who knew the song had ownership and the hunting rights to the land. All right, boys and girls, we're going to pause there. And as always, we'll see you soon.